See, I'm looking back there. Right up beside Jock's head. If he's heading for the bathroom, he's in trouble.
Oh, I like that.
It worked.
Close the door.
We will call the meeting to order. The Capitola City Council, Thursday, April 27th. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Peterson,
Here?
Councilmember Bertrand,
Here.
Councilmember Bodor,
Here.
Vice Mayor Termini.
Here. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being cablecast live on Charter Communications, Cable TV Channel 8, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. It's being recorded to be rebroadcast on the following Wednesday, 8 a.m., and on Saturday following the first rebroadcast at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed live at thecityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Lynn Dutton. Please turn your cell phones off. Please sign your name on the sign-in sheet when you come to address the council. Mr. City Attorney, we have a report on the closed session?
Yes. Thank you, Vice Mayor Termini, members of the City Council. This evening, there are two items on the closed session agenda. The first was a pending litigation matter involving the lawsuit entitled Water Rock Construction, Inc. versus the City of Capitola and related cross-action. The second was a performance evaluation of the city attorney. There's no reportable action.
Thank you. Are there any additional materials?
None were received.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no changes.
We'll move on to public comments. This is the time from anyone from the public who would like to address the council on items not on this evening's agenda. Please come forward. Hi, Bob.
Hi, how you doing, Mike?
Good.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. Bob Edgren here. There's a couple issues I wanted to talk about. One is there seems to be an evolving problem with skateboarders down on the Esplanade Park and in the village.
You get closer to the microphone, Bob.
Oh, there seems to be an evolving problem of skateboarders down in the village and also in the Esplanade area. This has really been going on for some time. It seems that the people from out of town, when approached, understand the situation, but there's a number of local kids that really want to taunt, provoke, and cause problems. I emailed you all a couple emails about this with some solutions. One of the solutions I got from someone on the police staff was to hire First Alarm to put a couple foot patrol people down there. So anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because I already sent you a lot of information on it. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring up was the mall, and I think we should keep a close eye on what's going on, just from my trying to keep my ear to the ground on what's going on there and my experience with years of dealing with malls. I don't think the new owner, Merloni and Geyer, I don't think they have any concrete exciting news to bring on the table for the mall. We've already lost Sears Automotive. We've lost Aeropostale. I would think in the next year we're going to lose Sears altogether, possibly nationwide. So I think to err on the side of what's the word I'm looking for? To be cautious, I think it would be prudent to develop a budget whereby we're looking at an income generating out of the mall about 50%. Whatever happens to the mall, if the new owners come in and really do a number on it, great. If they don't, there's going to be more vacancies. And so far, I don't see any bright lights there. And I think under the circumstances, that should be looked at very carefully. The mall is, as you know, is a big generator of revenue for the city. And all of a sudden, if that goes down, a lot of our programs are going to be jeopardized. The other thing that caught my attention during the discussion of the library was the ingress, the egress. I understand that it's going to be moved closer, more north on Wharf Road. And I'm not an engineer, but just from common sense, that's closer to that blind curve. I would think that's going to be more of a hazard. So I would ask you to either ask Steve or whoever if that's going to be an issue. To me, it would be. I'm already concerned about that blind curve. And the previous studies discussed using Claire's as an exit or entrance. That's not going to be done, but I think that's something to be looked at. What else do I got? Oh, 2 minutes?
Nope.
Okay.
No minutes. Thanks,
2
Bob.
minutes, okay.
Appreciate your comments.
Sure.
Would anyone else like to address the council on items not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, staff, any comments?
Staff has no comments at this time.
I don't see our treasurer here this evening, so I'll ask council. Ed,
No comments tonight.
Jacques,
Excuse me, Peter, our city treasurer, is sick. He
Oh.
missed the FAC meeting yesterday
Sorry to hear
and made
that.
his excuses for that. No comments.
I wasn't looking for a written note from his doctor. It's okay. Kristen,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the county parks is going to be having their strategic plan update on Saturday, May 6th from 10 to noon at Aptos Village Park, and also Thursday, May 11th from 6:30 to 8:30 at the community room at Simpkins Family Swim Center. And then the last one is that this Sunday, April 30th at 1 p.m. is a chance to be involved in a restoration at Peary Park where they're removing invasive ivy, and you do need a release form which can be downloaded on the city website.
fantastic. Thank you. I might note that the Easter Bunny arrived in Capitola last Saturday, and a good time was had by all, plus many hundreds of children. And I don't think there was an egg left on that beach after about 30 seconds. It was pretty amazing. We're talking about thousands of eggs, too. Thank you, Chief. That was a great event. I would also like to ask Public Works, Steve, maybe you can come on up and talk to us about our beach and the efforts that we're undergoing and the obstacles to getting all the debris off the beach.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd be happy to. So our maintenance of our beach, we've been trying to clear the debris as best we can. We have pretty much limited access. Our main access to the beach, as you all know, is off the Esplanade, which is now cut off by Soquel Creek. We are limited on when we can backfill that portion of the creek. We cannot start that work until May 20th per our permits for our creek maintenance that we do. It's permits from 7 different resource agencies, including 3 federal agencies and a couple states. And so we're really limited on the ability to control where the creek goes through the beach until May 20th. At that time, if the flows are less than 30 CFS, we're able to build the lagoon we see every year, grade the beach out, and then we would have our normal summertime beach. Until then, we're limited. We are trying to remove some of the wood. A lot of the wood will be buried when we backfill the creek that goes along the Esplanade right now, so we're not really anxious to get rid of it. We are going to try and clean the beach between Jetty 1 and Jetty 2 in the next couple days, see if we can improve that a little bit. I know questions come about sifting the sand. So right now, with our main access coming off the wharf, the sifter can't go and fit under the wharf. So we cannot sift the beach until we get the creek moved, as we always do. So it's kind of a timing thing. Right now, the flows are at 74 CFS. As you can imagine, with all the rain, we've had more flows than we usually do. Right now, we're usually under 20 CFS in the creek. We're watching it closely. We may get to that May 20th deadline, and if we're over 30 CFS, we may not be able to do a whole lot until we get under it. We're actually talking with some of the resource agencies right now to see if they'll let us kind of shift the channel, build the main beach, have a channel that goes right next to the flume, and then have the Venetian beach. Can't promise you that, but we're trying to see if that's a possibility.
Is that Fish and Game we have to approach?
It's, on the state level, it'll be Fish and Game, and on the federal level, it'll be Fish and, and the National Marine Fisheries. So,
Okay. Any questions, council?
Yeah, just, you mentioned, I got the three S's, the sand, the sift, and the seaweed. Just a question about the seaweed. Is there any regulations about whether we can haul seaweed away, or whether it has to go back in the ocean where it came from, or is that at our discretion?
right now, it's at our discretion. We've never hauled it off. We really don't have the ability to get dump trucks and stuff down on the beach, so we don't do that. Right now, we kind of push it down into the surf line every morning during the summer and move it along that way. That may be changing. I know the city of Santa Cruz hauls off their beach. That's just an expense. They own the landfill. They have the dump trucks available. We don't. So right now, that's what we do, is we push it down the water lines in the morning, try and gather it up in a bigger balls down by the jetty number 1 and let it wash away that way.
It's got to be something good about restoring it to the nature, I would assume, but I don't know the details.
Maybe you can let us know what the expense would be to take the seaweed away that we rake up, and certainly not the seaweed in the ocean, just the seaweed that gets washed up and dried out on the shore.
Problem is, I mean, it's an ongoing thing, as I'm sure
Oh,
you're aware.
I understand.
It would be very expensive in equipment, but I'd be happy to try and throw a number at it if
Sure.
I can.
Jacques, you had something?
So I'd just like people here in Capitola to get a really good appreciation of how many agencies you have to deal with. And if you could sort of give a list, if you can, and talk, and some of the difficulties, because a lot of people complain we don't act fast enough, but in reality, you're juggling many different agencies. And
So
It's a-
right now, we're actually trying to renew all our permits. We got word yesterday that our Corps of Engineer permit was approved. So we have a permit with the Corps of Engineers, which includes consultation with National Marine Fisheries, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And then that also includes consultation with the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And then more on the local side, we have California Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, the Coastal Commission, and then the Marine Sanctuary. So there's 8 agencies that we get permits. They're actually bundled together into 2 different permits, but we have to meet the condition of 8 different agencies. We've consulted with them all, trying to get them all renewed this year. And it looks like we'll make it for May 20th. Now we just need the flows to cooperate with us.
okay, that sounds like a pretty big bird. It's not just a simple thing of having a tractor out there.
Absolutely not, yeah.
Great.
And the amount of, people watching us on the regulatory side is a lot. So we can't just kind of hope that they're not going to watch us one year.
Okay, well, I thank you for your
Thank you,
crew. I've watched them do the seaweed push every year. It's quite an amazing thing. And, if they didn't do that, also what would happen in the lagoon?
If we didn't remove the
Seaweed, yeah. I
the
think-
seaweed, so before they didn't used to pull the seaweed out of there, and eventually it starts to rot, and then the lagoon itself will become rather odorous, and we'll have problems that way. So it's a good thing for us to get as much kelp out of there as we can.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
So thank you.
I'd also like to mention that New Brighton Middle School has once again brought a new installation of art to the council chambers. Check it out. And lastly, this month's Content magazine from Silicon Valley. It is a prestigious magazine that has a full spread on Capitola. So when you can't find a place to park, it's because all the folks are coming over from the Silicon Valley. But they love us. They mention many of our restaurants. They mention how lovely our beach is. Thank you, Steve. And that's all I have. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar are a number of items that are taken under a single vote unless someone from the public or a member of the council would like to pull an item. Council, is there anyone who wishes to pull an item or ask a question about any items on the consent? Seeing none, anyone from the public? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt consent calendar.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Moving right along to general government and public hearings. First item on our agenda is a community development block grant funded energy efficiency program. Our recommended action is to authorize staff to promote a CDBG funded energy efficiency grant program for lower income residents. And our community development director has joined us. Greetings.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. As you recall, in 2014, we were awarded a $500,000 CDBG grant to help fund our first-time homebuyer program and our home rehabilitation program. Shortly thereafter, the council adopted guidelines which lays out the various types of improvements that could be done under the rehab program with those dollars. And one of the things we did include was energy and water efficiency programs. So that's in there now, and what we're simply asking for you this evening is authorization to promote that program as a grant. The one question you may want to consider is under the guidelines, we can give a grant up to $7,500. Typically, those are for more health and safety type improvements. We're suggesting leaving that amount the same, but it might be something you think should be reduced or have a different maximum amount if it was for exclusive energy or water efficiency upgrades.
Can you
And
give us an example of a health and safety improvement grant?
Sure. A lot of the things we often see is an ADA accessible shower, new stairs going into a mobile home coach, HVAC systems, other things, wiring, plumbing, things of that nature.
Okay, and the income levels?
It's 80% of the area median income in order to qualify, based on household size.
Very good. Council, any questions of staff?
So when I talk to folks that I know who have mobile homes, seems like things like heaters go out. Does this cover that? Okay, and then sometimes wiring and roof leakings.
Yeah, those would ordinarily be kind of health and safety items that are
Okay.
ordinarily covered. What we'd really be looking at is promoting folks to make more energy efficiency improvements, whether it be new appliances,
Right.
windows, weatherization, water fixtures, those types of things. Let them know the money is available. I should also note that we do have a 3-year term to spend our grant. That'll end in September. In the past, CDBG often just granted extensions very easily. I've been told that they're no longer inclined to do so. So that would also help us hopefully spend our remaining dollars before that grant money.
Rich, is there, I'm sure that the Commission on the Environment is keenly interested in this. Is there any way of publicizing this in a way so that people do go for the energy efficiency and water saving? I think that would be a real boon, and I don't think you'd have any problem getting grant applicants.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll certainly talk to the Commission on the Environment. We'll publicize it, print out some flyers, send them to mobile home parks or multifamily condo units, places where they're more likely to meet the income certifications. And we try to do that as soon as possible, get the word out.
Great. Any other questions, Council? I'll open it up to the public. Anyone from the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the Council. Kristen, anything? Chuck?
I think it's a great program. I think I would hate to see us not use the money we have available. So if this is a way to deliver that money so the public can access it, and I make a motion, we adopt staff recommendation.
Second.
Is there a second by Councilmember Peterson? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to item 8B, letter of opposition to SB 649 wireless telecommunications facility. Direct the Vice Mayor to sign a letter on behalf of the city opposing SB 649. And Mr. City Manager, I think you have information on this?
Our city clerk is actually going to give you the
excellent.
briefing.
Yes, this item came to our attention thanks to the city attorney's office. Major concerns being that this bill would remove the remaining local oversight that we have for many small cell wireless facilities. As you know, we recently updated our own ordinance, and there was great community concern about maintaining and perhaps increasing the amount of local oversight we have, and this bill would reduce that. It has already gone through two committees at the Senate level. Yesterday, the Governance and Finance Committee passed it. So it is now moving on to Senate Appropriations. So the draft that you have in your packet indicates the previous commission. We will update it and send it to the most current body that will be overseeing it should the council choose to oppose this. There was an attached letter outlining some of the details by many of the larger organizations that are opposing this because they do not wish to lose local oversight.
And would it be safe to say that this would take the last remaining bit of control we have out of our ordinance?
This law, if it were to pass, really gives the utility,
Carriers?
carriers, thank you, looking for the right word there. They're not utilities, right?
Not yet.
The ability to put small cells on any of our fixtures, any of our towers around town, really with almost no control over it at all. There's opposition from the League of California Cities, from CSAC, from the APA. So pretty much most of the planning and city advocacy groups are all united. This would be a bad thing, and it would get rid of any control we might have. It's not to say that small cells someday might be something that could be useful for the city, but they should be put through the same sort of discretionary review process, given that they're our property, that anything else would be.
Very
I
good.
just
Yes.
returned from a conference in DC this past week, and this was one of the topics that was discussed. This is really part of a major nationwide lobbying effort on behalf of the telecommunications industry that are going after state legislatures and trying to make headway in areas where they haven't yet been successful in the Congress. So it's a nationwide trend, and you're likely to see other efforts continue as we go forward.
No doubt. Council, any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll open this up to the public. Anyone who would like to address the council on this item, please step forward. Bob, our speaker of the evening,
Yeah, I guess so.
our guest speaker of the evening?
Yeah, Bob Egren again. I had brought this up before. Is there any reason why we cannot publish and keep open to the public who has the licenses to these locations, how much money they get, what kind of energy levels are emitted, and so forth? It seems to me like this would be really a nice thing for the people of our city to know. I don't know if it's legal or not, but it seems to me like it'd be good to know.
Thank you.
Okay.
I believe the amount of rent and who it's going to is pretty much a private commerce matter, and I also believe that the radiation levels, the emissions, are part of a public record when they file for these sites, are they not?
That's part of the information that they submit, but you're right. And the ownership of the sites is likewise public information. But what they pay for use of these facilities in terms of rent, as well as how much revenue they generate for companies, we have no access to that information.
Great. Thank you. Okay, bringing it back to the council. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we've been round and round with this, and we've had very contentious battles, and I think a lot of our rights were taken away, as we all realized. And the last thing we did was to try to adopt an ordinance that gave us a little control with what we could do, especially with regard to residential neighborhoods. So I think it's important, for the citizens of Capitola that we support the opposition to this bill and try to retain as much control as possible. And I support staff recommendation and would like to direct the vice mayor to sign this document and send it.
Jacques?
I agree. I think community members have come to us to tell us that they want more local control, so I agree. That's what we should do.
I sat on this council when the Federal Telecommunications Act was enacted, and not only did it strip us of the ability to choose the cable company that serves Capitola, many people don't realize that, we have no control over the cable company that services Capitola. And it also stripped us of any ability to scrutinize and decline the installation of major cell towers or sites. So we have little control enough. Anything that gives us even less or takes even more of our control away cannot be good for the community, cannot be good for Capitola. And is there a motion?
That was my motion to
That was your
support.
motion. Is there a second? Second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Now for the main event. It is the zoning code update. Accept the staff presentation, discuss the proposed zoning code update, identify desired code revisions, and continue the public hearing to the May 11th meeting. And I might remind council, this is a time to not wordsmith the zoning code you've been provided with, but to give direction to staff on what your most important points are for them to review and bring back to us. And with that, Katie,
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you, City Council and Mayor. This evening, we're going to go over we took your changes that you made to the zoning code, brought them to Planning Commission. There were a few tweaks that happened at Planning Commission, and we want tonight is an update on those items that we think are, I highlighted highlighted 10 items in a report that we thought were worthy of bringing back to you for further discussion and make sure that everyone's on the same page or agree to disagree on some items. So with that,
Just a quick question.
yes.
Will any of our previous documents of the book we'd be following there, or would it be better just to follow with you on screen?
It would be best to follow on screen. Tonight my presentation is focused on your attachment 1. That was the latest issues in the zoning code update. So before you is the Planning Commission review of the City Council edits, and the Planning Commission reviewed your edits on April 6th, and they forwarded a positive recommendation for the zoning code to go out for public review after your review. So I've got 10 topics for discussion. I'll go in order by the topic this evening, except for accessory dwelling units. That gets a little more in-depth with the new state legislation, so I'm going to bring that one up last because we'll spend a little more time on it. So first, we'll go over the zoning map changes that occurred at the Planning Commission since you've last seen it, the transient rental overlay, which will now become the vacation rental overlay, and the environmentally sensitive habitat area. So this slide is the most up-to-date April 13th, 2017 zoning map. As we update zoning maps, the date is in the right-hand corner. So some of the highlights that happened at Planning Commission at 911 Capitola Avenue. We previously only had the front 2 properties highlighted as mixed-use neighborhood, and that should have extended all the way back to the hotel property. So now we've got all 4 of the parcels. The second was Shadowbrook. Shadowbrook Restaurant was previously, it's right next to the mixed-use neighborhood district, but we had it as, it's visitors serving, but we had the underlying zoning as community commercial. So within the change, it's now mixed-use neighborhood, so it fits more in with its surroundings. And next is an owner of a property, Bromer Street, approached the city. During the revisions, the 3 properties that you see here, 381, 391, and 3895, Bromer, were originally CC, and then within the zoning code update, they were changed to residential multifamily low. And one of the owners came in and said, well, we're between the multifamily high and the CC zone. We'd also like to be the multifamily high. And what the current situation there, I've got the lot sizes and what existing units are on each site. So as you can see, there's 2 units at 3881, and the other 2 properties currently have 1 unit. There is a unit behind 3891, but it doesn't have a kitchen or sleeping space in there, so it's not considered a separate dwelling unit. Under the RML, as it is proposed in the current draft, each of these sites, except for 4788, would be limited to 1 unit, and they already have 2. And the other 2 sites would be 1 single-family home with an additional ADU. By increasing this to the high density, shown on the very bottom of the table, each property would be allowed to have 2 units. And their interest in this is that although they like the idea of ADUs, they have to live in one of the ADUs, and it gives them a little more flexibility to produce a duplex and not have to live on the site. So that was a request that came to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission thought it was a fair request where they previously were community commercial and could do more with the property anyway. They could have done a mixed-use development like we recently saw approved by the Planning Commission. And so by allowing them to be at high density, they still have the ability to do a little more on their property, but not quite to the level of their current zoning of community commercial. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, why would we not, considering the community commercial and high density low are bracketing those 3 properties, why would we not allow community commercial to move all the way to the RMH?
It
Like
currently
it was. Why are we
is.
why are we going backwards?
Oh, because they want to continue to use their properties for housing, and currently if you're community commercial and you're a residential home, you're not allowed to do any
Do
type of
anything,
addition.
Okay.
So they're stuck in their current footprints. Any other questions? And so the current proposal with the draft that you have, it's shown as high density.
And are you gonna want us to weigh in on these, or?
So I think
how-
now would be the appropriate time to weigh in on those changes, and then we'll get to the vacation rental overlay. So,
Anyone have anything to say about that last item?
Well, I kind of lean with you. I would have preferred it to remain, you know, commercial, but I don't want to tie the hands of the people that live there. So I'm compelled, I can't see punishing them with low. I think because the property to the left is high, it seems consistent, so I can support what the planning commission, the direction they were going. I'm a little disappointed it's not community commercial, but
If someone were to acquire those 3 properties and the property on the corner, could they not go back the other way with application to planning?
yes, they could come in for a zone
Okay.
change.
Good, that's,
we're not tying their hands.
Perfect.
I think
No.
we're trying to help the homeowners is
Right.
what, I believe that's the direction the planning commission probably went, and
Perfectly
I
reasonable.
support that.
Okay, next we'll go into the vacation rental overlay. So, last time we were in front of you, we didn't have direction on the, a couple requests that had come in for the vacation rental overlay. The first was to extend the vacation rental overlay to Bay Avenue. And the second was to include 502 Bula Avenue. So we took these both back to the Planning Commission. They reviewed the 2 requests, and in their review, the Planning Commission did not want to extend the vacation rental all the way to Bay Avenue. They like that it's condensed in the village area, and that the Capitola Avenue is used as mixed use as it continues up towards Bay. And also, but they did agree with including 502 Bula. They thought it's unique in that it's kind of an island by itself. It is, there's
Oh, yeah, we
plenty
know.
of parking around it, and they thought that was reasonable. So with that, I'll request discussion on that.
sounds great to me. Anybody?
Yeah, I'm against extending it up Capitol, and I'm glad that they made that inclusion of the Sullivan House. I know that we impacted the Sullivan family as a city for many years, and it's a minor request, and I someday think that could be developed into a bed and breakfast or something like that that would carry a little bit of charm with the city, so I'm glad to see that included in the overlay so that people can experience that home.
And by the way, after the full staff presentation, I will open this up to the public. Kristen, anything? We're all good? Jacques? Okay, carry on.
Okay. And third, the environmentally sensitive habitat. When we took this to Planning Commission, there was some concern with areas that have been developed within the environmentally sensitive habitat. It's our understanding when the first maps came out, it was not an exact science where the lines were drawn. So we hired a biologist to go back, look at the lines. And so the area you're seeing in light green is what used to exist in the environmentally sensitive habitat. And now what we're proposing is that it be decreased to the area shown in the dark green. So for instance, our city, the new lower parking lot would have been identified as an environmentally sensitive habitat. Now you're seeing some part of the edge, but otherwise, that's just one example. And areas of the village that are completely developed that were in there are now, it's now the beach waterfront area.
And Katie, the upper right-hand corner, isn't that an area that was not previously environmentally sensitive that's been included? The upper right boundary to the city?
Correct, yeah, along
Okay, so
McGregor.
we did extend the
Mhm.
environmental habitat as well.
Yes.
Okay. Council, anything?
Planning Commission supported this.
We are we just received this back from the biologist. In between, we're taking it to them next week. I'd be happy to bring this back to you. If they raise any issues, we'll definitely bring it back to you.
Yeah, I kind of like to see the biologist's take on this and what is the basis of the retreat.
And I'm sure we
So we-
will, since it's such a fresh report.
We
Right.
don't have a biology report. What we scoped the biologists to do is to go out and do a qualitative survey of these various areas and determine if they met environmentally sensitive habitat area definitions. As Katie mentioned, there were areas that were very confusing to us why they were ever mapped, particularly the Central Village. And it has real implications. If you're in an area that's mapped as environmentally sensitive area, we're technically supposed to require you to do a biology study and have minimum setbacks from that area. So there would be portions of the village you couldn't really develop. Fortunately, nobody ever took that regulation overly seriously, but we think this is an important cleanup. We did discuss this with the Planning Commission, but they haven't seen the figure. They were supportive of updating it. My expectation is that they will accept it. But again, I think my suggestion would be, if they have any questions or they want any modifications, that we return to you at that point, and let you weigh in.
Jacques?
I was just gonna say, in theory, I support that avenue. So.
Yeah, in a way I do too. I'd like to know why we did it at one time. And if there's no reason for it, obviously we shouldn't be tying the hands of property owners. But, you know, we need to have some sort of data to sort of clear that subject.
Substantiate it.
Yeah, substantiate.
Certainly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, that wraps up the most recent updates to the zoning map. So I think now would be an appropriate time to open the public.
Anyone from the public like to speak to us on the items that we've discussed? By the way, this is Bob. Just want to let you all know. Okay, good.
How's it going? These poor high school students are probably waiting to get their awards. Anyway, yeah, I've been on property on Capitol Avenue for 40 years. Halfway up, I submitted about, I think, 8 signed petitions to convert that area to transient residential. 40 years ago, it was very easy to rent out. It was kind of almost country. Believe it or not, once in a while I see people walk on horses go down the avenue. Now it's completely different. We've got trucks going down the avenue. We got service trucks. We got motorcycles. Nobody wants to live there. Simple as that. You talk about strangling homeowners or property owners. That's strangling property owners. No one wants to rent there. It's just too busy. It's too noisy. So I think people out of town who are there visiting could handle living with a couple days of noise, but people on a long-term basis, they can't. Simple as that. No families live on Capitol Avenue anymore. They used to, but they don't anymore. So, you know, again, I appeal. I will get more people signed on. I think I've got 8 now. And it's not that big of a, to me, it's not that big of a deal. I think there's like 18 properties there that are still residential. It's not like a residential area. It's like a, I don't know what it is, but it's not a residential area. You got a lot of offices, you got medical facilities, you got, I would only think that adding transient would not only help the, you know, income for the city for the transient tax, but some people don't want to live, or some people don't want to stay in the village. They prefer to stay a little outside the village. There's a lot of people who would like to rent vacation rentals up on Jewel Box, okay? Well, that's a neighborhood. Capitol Avenue isn't. It's like, and the competition for parking is fierce, okay? Over the years, it's gotten tighter and tighter. So, you know, that's my appeal. You know, it's gotten tough. It's very, very hard to find good renters, okay? And so that's my plea again.
Bob, just a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Any of your petition signers live on Oak Drive?
No, they don't.
Well, that was the concern, I think, of the Planning Commission and the council, is the fact that while Capitol Avenue might not necessarily be a residential neighborhood, their backyards are adjoined by the backyards of the people on Oak Drive. And that's always our concern, the adjacency.
Well, that, I think that could probably be addressed somehow if you want to build a higher fence. If you wanna
Bring us a
build-
petition with all the people on Oak Drive, and we might even consider it.
Really, that was the main objection?
That the people that you have signing it don't have a vested interest, as in their backyards don't adjoin the backyards of potential weekend rentals.
Wow. Well,
We'll talk more.
okay,
Thank you.
sounds good.
Anyone else like to address the council? Karen. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. So is this the item that has the sidewalk signs for the village on it?
Not
No.
yet.
That's item 9, and this is 1.
You guys are slow.
No.
I was all impressed. I thought, oh my God.
That
we've gone
actually, that
through
was item.
telecommunications already?
Karen, that was item 9 2 weeks ago. We don't have the signs on this. But we'll let you talk about it at the end of the meeting for sure. Okay, Katie, we're rolling.
Okay, thank you. So clear direction to move forward with the Planning Commission recommendation, and we'll come back if there's a change to the environmentally sensitive habitat.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Next, topic 2, height exception in the mixed-use village. Last time we were here with you, there was a lot of creative thought, and we came to a recommendation from the city council. When we brought it to planning commission, we asked for a couple tweaks so that it was extremely clear to apply. Planning commission originally recommended an exception of up to 30 feet for habitable space with a roof pitch of at least a 512 roof pitch. When this came to city council, the planning commission direction for up to 30 feet for a structure with a minimum 512 pitch was stayed, and then there was also a request to add that up to 33 feet for a pitched roof with a maximum plate height of 26 feet and no habitable space above the plate line. It wasn't clear at the end of that hearing whether or not the first height exception was supposed to remove. So when we took it to planning commission, we said there's two things we feel we need to address. One is we now have a height exception for two different heights. There's 30 feet and 33 feet. The second is the non-habitable space. As we worked through that request that evening, we raised concerns for how staff in the future would be monitoring whether or not somebody internally is utilizing the space for habitable space. And I went back to the minutes, and it seemed like the true concern was not having too many breaks in the roof for people to be walking out and having doorways. And when we took this to planning commission, we talked about, should we be limiting the amount of dormers? Should we be eliminating or limiting doors? What should be limited in order to take away the concern about habitable space but make sure the design works? So we went to planning commission. They directed us, let's keep the 33-foot max height, so the 30 went away, it's 33. Keep the 26-foot maximum plate height, and to keep the minimum 512 roof pitch. So here you can see how this would work out. If you had a commercial first floor with a 10-foot ceiling height plus 1 foot for the floor, you'd have 11. The next floor height at 8 feet plus 1 for the floor, you would be up to 20. And with the 33-foot max height, you could have an additional 6 feet of height within the building walls up to the max plate height, and then your pitched roof would be on top of that could extend another 7 feet. So it could accommodate 3 stories. And now I'm going to give you a couple examples in our village of how this would work. This is showing under the current height standard what the Six Sisters, how it fits. So they've got an 18-foot top of wall. You can see Ryan standing with the largest ruler we have in City Hall. That ruler measures 27 feet. So the Six Sisters building is a max height of 27. So this would fit perfectly within the zoning code without a height exception. Next, this is the well-talked-about home on San Jose that they fit 3 stories within the 27-foot height limit. And that was just keeping really low story levels. And one issue that we have talked about in previous meetings is that due to the floodplain, the first level is getting higher because of the floodplain. So why an exception is necessary. And this is the superintendent building on the corner of Monterey, Capitola. And here you can see there's a 22-foot top of wall. And actually on that back corner, it's at 26 feet. The maximum height of the superintendent building is at 33 feet, so it's almost the perfect example of what could be accomplished under this new zoning exception. And they do have a pitched roof, so it fits within the allowance.
Now, before you go from the superintendent's building, the dormer there, that sort of flies in the face of non-habitable space above the 26-foot plate height, does it not?
So within this amendment, the planning commission was saying, let's get rid of the non-habitable space requirement and allow habitable space.
Good.
But limit what can be, limit that there cannot be doors and
Decks.
and decks on the 3rd story. So there you see a cross gable. That's a cross gable. You would also be allowed to have dormers that could bring in. Dormers typically make buildings interesting, and they add to the architecture, and they'd bring in light. So if you had a nice open ceiling, you could get more light into the building. And this is looking from the other elevation. So again, you can see the existing 22-foot top of wall, 26 feet would just be a little bit higher, and it's at the maximum of 33 feet. So that's the example. So the Planning Commission recommendation, again, is a 33-foot max height with a minimum 512 roof pitch. It would have to be a gabled or hipped roof, and we'd show examples of those. And that the plate height could be a maximum of 26 feet, and no breaks in the roof slope for doors and decks. So with that, I'll
Council?
take comment.
Comments,
Jock?
not questions.
I see something welling up.
No, I
No?
just want to clarify, and the residency issue?
So today, we discussed a residency issue, and this would actually be in the land use table for Central Village. There was a request by Councilmember Bertrand to limit the top story within the village to residential. So right now, you're allowed to have office space in the limitation in the village right now for use is that the first story cannot be residential. It has to be commercial, and it cannot be office. And then when you go up, you can have office and residential on the second and third stories. So we discussed the idea, Councilmember Bertrand's idea of limiting the top story to just residential, and he wanted to discuss that this evening. So maybe first we'll start with the height and then talk about land use, and if you'd like to limit what happens in the upper stories.
Does anyone have anything to discuss about the height? Are we all good with that?
I'm-
Then let's move on to land use. I'm sorry, Ed.
I just want, there was a lot of discussion on this, and I'm just glad that the planning commission came to the point
Yeah.
with this, because I had some discussion with Katie today, and I appreciate that time, just to make this clear, but it seems like all the issues, because the main issue was to try to raise the height while invoking architecture, which was the content. And I got into a problem where the inhabitable space, because I was not opposed to somebody if they wanted to vault the entire third floor and make it open, which still gave us the roof. Technically, it was habitable space, which went contrary to what we designed. So the tweaking
Right.
by the planning commission,
Rational.
rational. There we go. So I support this modification.
What about the concept of ensuring that the third floor is strictly residential? Feelings on that, Kristen? Why don't you make a, what's your case for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
have a
Well,
case.
my case is dwindling residents in the village. And to me, the village should be a little bit more vibrant if we have residents here. And if we keep saying that we're going to push commercial, we're going to push businesses and stuff like that, it takes away for the opportunities for people to actually live there. Now, a person living in a garret apartment on the third floor, something similar to the superintendent's building, may not be there for years and years, I don't know, but maybe it's an opportunity for cheaper housing for people that could actually live in the neighborhood, go to school, maybe work in some of our restaurants. So my main point is I would like to have more housing available for people who live in the village so that we have people walking around, enjoying the area and being part of the city in that particular part. Since I've been here, I've noticed fewer and fewer people actually live in the village and sort of dead at night. I walk through there at night and there's only a few places now. And so that's what bothers me.
Okay, let me ask planning a question. Do we have a basis for that kind of land use decision? Do you think we have findings for that?
So I can bring up a couple more things to consider, and then we can talk about a basis. Some other considerations are in the village, we do have a residential overlay. So Lawn Way is, if you're in one of the residential units along Lawn Way, it is limited to residential. Also, Rich just pulled up the map here. So you can see the Venetians are limited to residential. The Lawn Way is limited to residential. The
El Camino?
along Cherry Avenue forward to Capitola Avenue is, and along Riverview. So there are areas that are strictly residential and that commercial could not infiltrate into. One of I can appreciate the thought of keeping a place alive and making sure that there are always people there and it's a happening place. When the new concept of form-based code that's come out, one thing they say within that when you're trying to make a place be energetic and have it alive and running during normal, from morning to night, is that you really want to keep some flexibility in uses. You've got a place that's highly desirable because of the look and feel of the village, and that by providing some flexibility in what the property owner can do on the second and third stories, they can kind of make those decisions of what will the market carry, and that way they're getting the value out of their property so that it's being utilized. So if the market's calling for office space on the second and third story, you see more of that, I think, along Capitola Avenue. There's a few law offices that exist on second stories. But more along Capitola Avenue as you come around the corner into the heart of the village, I think there's more residential use right now. We've got an application that was before the Planning Commission to redo above that Just Babies commercial site, to redo the 2 units that are above that. So I think it's by allowing the property owner the flexibility to reinvest into their building, but limiting the first story to commercial. I think it's a good mix, but with the residential overlay.
Then perhaps on the 11th, you can bring that back, because we can notice the public about our thoughts on making the third story strictly residential. And we can hear if there's any pushback or are there any concerns from property owners. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, Katie?
Okay. So next we're jumping to the regional commercial district and the land use changes that occurred. So when the city council reviewed this last, the direction was that single-family dwellings were prohibited, but to list that within the table and make it very clear that single-family dwellings are prohibited, so that was added as a red line. And the Planning Commission agreed with that change. Second was to prohibit multifamily dwellings in the regional commercial. So previously, multifamily dwellings were allowed as a conditional use permit, and there was a condition stating that you couldn't go beyond a certain limit. I think it was up to 50%. And then residential, and the Planning Commission brought up points that they would like that flexibility of multifamily dwellings to be allowed in the regional commercial area, because mixed use isn't always first floor commercial and the upper stories as residential, but their point was that sometimes you'll have a commercial center next to a residential development, and they don't want to prohibit that from happening. So that's why they asked that it go back to a conditional use permit. They requested that of City Council. And then for the residential mixed use, there was direction to prohibit residential uses on the first story. So with that, I'd like to say the changes that were made at the council they reflect the current code that we have today, except there is with for the residential mixed use, I think there's a limit of the 50% that was applied to the multifamily dwellings. So the code, as you suggested, it reflects the code of today. And with that, the Planning Commission was asking that you reconsider multifamily dwellings within regional commercial and the limitation for commercial only on the first floor within mixed use. Another point I'd like to bring up is that topic number 3 really relates to topic number 4, which is mall redevelopment. And when that site redevelops, we foresee that there'll be a specific plan that will be created, or an area plan in which the whole site will be considered, and if it's appropriate for there to be a multifamily dwelling within a specific plan, then you have that opportunity at that time, rather than going through a conditional use permit process, but to look at the overall future development and say, this is appropriate to have a apartment complex here that doesn't have commercial on the first floor. So there is another avenue with keeping your original recommendation in place.
Katie, did we not give them the ability to have more residential, barring the first floor, to have much more than 50%, just due to the changes and the pressure of the economics right now? That, we're seeing developments in Santa Cruz that are multi-story, that are 10% residential, and or sorry, 10% commercial, 90% residential. So I thought we discussed giving developers more latitude to provide more residences on these commercial properties as long as they had, commercial on the first floor.
Exactly, you did for the mixed use.
Right.
And so their request was to still allow just a single-use building of just residential without the requirement of residential, or
And-
commercial on the bottom floor.
Right, but
But you
that,
you got rid of that 50% requirement
Right.
within the residential mixed use.
good. I just wanted to double check my memory. How do we feel about it would be something that would come to the council. And I could see where something like the mall, where there would be a lot of commercial and there might be a residential building that goes from floor 1 to floor 6, all residential, but within the confines of that full development.
That footprint, yeah.
Right.
So it'll be a separate plan area or something similar.
Yeah, for lack of a better word, a Santana Row-ish
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Kristen? I think we're feeling good.
Keep it as is.
Yeah.
As you originally suggested.
Well, no, that we're going along with the planning commission, I believe.
Well, they want us to reconsider.
Oh, so to be clear, they wanted you to reconsider the red lines are the city council red lines that were made. And the planning commission would like, next to multifamily dwellings, the conditional use permit
Right.
to be an option again.
And I think that's what we've all agreed on as part of a full development, that we might consider that the multifamily dwellings within this district, if it's part of a full development of
She was
commercial
talking, that was
residential.
item 4, though. She was.
I think we're saying the same thing, are we not?
So this is within the land use table.
Right?
If we have it as it is today, as you suggested originally, to prohibit multifamily dwellings within the regional commercial, if a multifamily, solely multifamily, no commercial on the first story came in today, we would say, I'm sorry, it's prohibited and not allowed. The only avenue with the red line version would be to go through for a large-scale redevelopment that is subject to a specific plan or an area plan during redevelopment. So, as written today and redlined on the screen,
I'm thinking we're
was-
still, if it's not part of a full development, that sticking a, multifamily building footprint, first floor to whatever, I'm not seeing everybody, I'm not feeling the love up here for that.
I think what I hear you saying is if it was a horizontal mixed-use project where you have one parcel and you may have two buildings, one which is exclusively residential, but you also have commercial on the site, that's okay.
Yes.
What you don't want is a individual parcel in the regional commercial zone to develop exclusively with residential.
I think you're correct.
And we can codify that.
Right.
Just for clarification, because I'm just going by the numbers, okay? And on item 1, these are all our recommendations. And then on the left, on the right, the PC approves it or PC denied it. And when I go to item 2, it's the multifamily dwellings in CR district. Now, just for an example, was the project that we approved on 38th Avenue, was that, is that CR or was that CC?
neighborhood commercial.
Yeah, it was neighborhood.
No, okay, neither one is it, because I was trying to think if that was the same as approving multifamily then.
No.
Okay.
We had our hands tied by the.
So I think you're bringing this one back.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I mean,
Okay.
you've heard our comments and,
We'll make the revisions.
got it, thank you.
Yeah, we'll make revisions. So on the same lot, there'll have to be some component of commercial, and it will still need a conditional use permit in order
Correct.
to be reviewed.
Correct.
Okay. So next, topic 4, and just to be clear, I'm going to go back. Topic 3, the note 7, residential uses are prohibited on the first story. You'd like to keep that note for mixed-use development?
Doesn't tie our hands for them all.
No.
It's going to be a separate.
Okay, and that, then the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next, Capitola Mall redevelopment. There's a little paragraph within chapter 17.24, section 030E. And during the draft, we got comments from the new mall owner that they had concerns with the way it was drafted. So That section has been redrafted, and they've reviewed it and are in agreement. So it's within this section that a property may require a rezone plan development specific plan or development agreement, and also that an applicant shall demonstrate that the development type and pattern and site design will be compatible and not unreasonably interfere with future redevelopment of remaining parcels. So just clarifying kind of what the process is and what the goal is within that paragraph. The Planning Commission clarified that changed will to may. So depending on the type of development, it's not will, it may have to go through this process. So that's the change there, and we just wanted to check that there's any revisions to that, or is it okay as?
No, I feel nothing, and I don't see anything propping up here, but I think that it's good to note that Merlone and Geyer is interested enough in how we're fashioning this so that they are on the road to redeveloping them all. Thank you.
To me, this indicates that we're engaged with them and that this is an ongoing process towards eventual revisioning of our mall. So it's an ongoing process, so the public should know that we're actually working on this.
Very good. Okay, that takes us to topic 5. So topic 5, when we brought this before you last, this is office space and vertical zoning. So where office space is allowed, and this is regarding the changes that were made to the regional commercial. So within the community commercial, which will be south of Capitola Road, the city council agreed with our recommendation of where it's a permitted or a conditional use. Within the regional commercial, there was clear direction not to allow office space on the first story. So the areas in which it was going to be a conditional use permit, it is now prohibited. And upper floors, it's continues to be allowed as a permitted use. When we took this to Planning Commission, there was discussion on this item and concern. So they were, for ground floor, less than 5,000 square feet, the Planning Commission would like that to remain a conditional use permit. For ground floor, 5,000 square feet or more, they'd also like that to remain a conditional use permit. And also, if it's located towards the rear of a lot and not visible from the frontage, that they'd like that to be a permitted use. In the discussion here is that we have quite a few offices along 41st Avenue, more to the east, that are solely office spaces, office uses. I think there's one that's a real estate office, which is going to pull up some pictures. And so the change that was made to prohibit those uses, if one of these sites were to become vacant, after 90 days, they wouldn't be able to re-tenant it as an office. They would have to bring in some type of personal service establishment or a commercial use in which they're selling goods. So with that, we'd like you to reconsider that table, and if the table is to stay as originally proposed, staff has a recommendation that if there's an existing office building that's used exclusively for office space, that an exception be made to allow those to continue to lease to individual offices until such time that the entire building is redeveloped or removed. So that,
Council, I believe we had a lot of discussion about this, and there was a reason we were very pointed about it, and that is the dilution of our community or our regional commercial moving towards offices and doctors and, clinics and what have you. So I think we were pretty specific about it, but certainly I have no problem with that exception.
Right, our intent was not to add any more. What is done, so this just preserves that. So our intent was not to be punitive, but protect. So I support your comments.
This will allow us to get to more of a commercial area on, let's say, 41st. And so that whole vitality just, also for residents, also for commercial.
And it also helps us not dilute the retail center, the core of our retail center.
Right.
By seeing more and more offices take over what are now income-generating retail spaces.
Correct.
Good.
very good,
You
thank
recall
you.
the discussion well.
This guy is brilliant.
Every so often I pay attention.
Okay, next is
I'm
the.
good. Let me
Oh.
pause. Anything in the last couple of items that need to be brought to our attention? No? Thank you. We'll move along.
Okay,
Go-
next.
Show faces of alarm or wave your arms or anybody who wants to chime in. Make a mention? Sure, what is that? Use your microphone if you want to mention it in public.
I hope the discussion is enough to indicate that we've thought a lot about this, and I think every person here in the city council has been reading this document diligently, and if anyone reads planning codes, believe me, it's been a labor. So we've spent a lot of time working with staff, and I think it's gonna come up later, and that's one reason why our questions are pretty pointed, and we're pretty much, in a way, waiting for input, and that's what Mike said, but it's been a lot of work.
Thank you for that commercial announcement. The council appreciates it. And see, now you got Bob on his feet.
You
So,
did, Jacques.
thank you, Jacques Bertrand.
I just want to clarify, the whole movement here is to go towards retail something that generates tax, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
That was the last discussion.
Okay, the other thing, I'm sure you guys have thought about it, I haven't been in all the meetings, but is the ADA requirements. I can't imagine an office on the third or fourth floor without a lot of expensive ADA stuff. That's all.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay, so next is Coastal Commission edits. This came before you, one of the last meetings that we had, and it hadn't been blessed by the Planning Commission at that time. So we brought it at your direction. We brought the Coastal Commission edits that back to the Planning Commission. And during the first review of the draft, we provided the Coastal Commission with our zoning code, and they redlined it for us. They provided us with the edits that they would like in it. There was a mix of minor edits and then larger policy issues that were raised within the red lines that they provided. The current code that you have with the blue edits, some of those are our staff edits that are minor, and also we use blue for the Coastal Commission staff edits. And all of the Coastal Commission staff edits that were included in this draft in blue, they do not fundamentally affect policy. There's no major policy changes to what exists today. And they're minor in nature in the draft code. So we do expect, when we submit this to the Coastal Commission, that we'll probably receive more red lines from them for items that were not included. But
And-
as it stands today, it's our recommendation, without making any major policy shifts, to incorporate the edits that they've suggested in blue.
so you don't believe, I was going to suggest that we just go forward without, I hesitate to say without paying attention to their edits, but to go forward because, we keep on giving them more and more bites of the apple, and that we just go forward with what we want to present and just bring it to them as a piece and let them edit it once instead of letting them edit it 2 or 3 times. What are your thoughts on that?
If we had received that direction, I think prior to us providing them the opportunity to give us some feedback on the code, I would think that would have been appropriate. We did take this step to work with them. We've met with them on several occasions. I do think it would go a long way for them to see that we have incorporated the issues that, the recommendations that they made that are not policy changes. So I think they'll recognize their efforts are incorporated into this draft and that it wasn't for nothing.
Give us an example.
Um,
Something that's insignificant enough for us to just change at their direction.
So there was a couple things, and to their credit, I would say that was even beneficial where we added some background information. What are the components of our LCP? We wrote that out in there. A lot of places they wanted us to refer back to the Coastal Act with the statutory reference. A harmless change, in my opinion.
Certainly.
So there was a number of those items.
What are the harmful ones?
Give me an example
In
of
my opinion,
larger-
we did not accept anything that was harmful, but as we've discussed before, they would like significant new policies related to sea level rise, managed retreat. We haven't gone there at all in this code.
Good. So we're not incorporating their concept of us abandoning the village because of sea level rise?
Not at all. I
Thank you.
think that those are going to require significant more negotiation, and once we cross that bridge, we'll certainly be back before you to discuss, where they're at and get your direction on what the city can live with,
Or litigate?
whatever the case might be.
Yes.
I'm just concerned about the section, larger policy issues and what that would entail. And are there a lot of those, or?
There were a lot as it related to sea level rise, managed retreat, expanded setbacks from environmentally sensitive areas that would significantly affect Riverview Drive, maybe even up to Oak, beach management practices that we don't currently administer. So there were a number of significant policy changes. I think we'll probably see more of it once we formally submit.
Okay.
And what we've told them, and I think they understand, is that our decision makers are not ready to accept these changes at this time. We'll submit a code that we like, that we think is good. You give us formal comments, and at that point, we'll work it out.
I can think of one
our best.
significant win on the Coastal Commission, not that we're at odds or, contentious, but they told us at one point we couldn't sift the sand on our beach. And we demonstrated that we had been sifting the sand since before the Coastal Commission existed, and they backed away from that. Do you see anything that they're asking for that would dilute our power even further from this lofty body?
That issue has come up probably every 3 years.
know.
About 2 years ago, we again had to provide them information showing that we've been doing it since before the Coastal Act was adopted and we were grandfathered in. I do expect that they will want us to look at that again and maybe say as a condition of us updating your LCP, we want a beach management plan, leave some kelp on the beach for sea critters and flies and other habitat. And those are amongst the many issues I think we'll have to wade through.
So they could conceivably hold up our LCP approval for everything that they want.
Yeah, they can place a number of conditions on there that they think are appropriate and, in compliance with the Coastal Act, and we'll have to decide if we agree and if it's something that's acceptable or not.
Or if we want to maintain an LCP, because it may come to that.
Potentially.
Okay. Jock?
Right. So, as I expressed earlier when I met with you, Katie, one of my concerns is if due to wave action, flooding, or something like that, we have damage in the village. And I'm trying to understand how much leeway do we have in terms of repairing and replacing structures that are damaged. In one case, we're talking about natural disaster replacement, 50% of the building. That's in 4411. And then another place, we're talking about destroyed structures, and we're talking about 10%. So I'm trying to get an idea of what kind of latitude we have in terms of this section when there's damage to the buildings in the village, I guess, and other places in the city. There's, and what procedure do we go through? Do we have our hands tied and that kind of thing? I just want to get a better idea of how that works.
So the Coastal Act does have an exemption for structures that are damaged or destroyed due to acts of nature. So if there's a major storm, a building's damaged or destroyed, they would have the right to build it back in its current footprint. There are limitations, though, to modifications. So if they want to change anything with the building, they want to expand, there are limitations to doing that before you trigger the need for a coastal development permit.
So, supposing the deck on Zelda's got destroyed, what kind of situation would that present? I mean, we want the deck back. Would we get pushback on that kind of thing?
Sea level rise issues aside, that would be an exempt activity that would not require a coastal development permit if they replaced it as it was today. Now, they could theoretically say with the issue of sea level rise, once it's destroyed, it's gone, because we know this is going to keep recurring and it's going to be a repeated loss and it's time to retreat. And those are some of the, philosophical disagreements we've had with them. And I really, at this point, can't predict where they're going to come down with that. Although the staff seems to indicate that they're not there yet, where they want us to start leaving immediately.
Okay, so we have time on that issue, I guess. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Katie?
Okay, so with that, we're requesting direction on the edits that were in the code that were made by the Coastal Commission and if we can move forward with the document as is.
Well,
without-
I'd like to see you come back to us with any problematic edits that you think the council might be concerned with.
So the ones that are in there today, we do not believe are problematic. We
Right.
think they're really perfunctory kind of changes. The other stuff we've just rejected outright.
Thank you.
And that will come back after we submit something to the
Right.
Coastal Commission, then we'll bring that to you.
Sound right?
I think we should accept.
Good, thank you.
So-
I just want clarification on what situation we're in, that's pretty much it.
Well, remember, even though we can, sea level rise notwithstanding, that we may give them the ability to rebuild the deck, anything that occurs there is appealable to the Coastal Commission, even by Coastal Commission staff. So anything can be appealed. And it can be appealed by staff of Coastal Commission, not just Coastal Commissioners. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, carry on.
Okay, carrying on. So this was a in-depth discussion the first round with City Council, the allowed projections and encroachments into setback areas. We talked about hot tubs, we talked about outdoor dining desks,
Oh, yeah,
pizza
pizza ovens,
items, yeah, pizza ovens.
I'm gonna fight you on windmills.
Front porches, talking about making front yards friendly and giving people rights to their backyard to utilize it. We took this to the Planning Commission. A couple changes that occurred in this section was there was a landscape feature, and such as fountains and statues. This is found on page 9 of the packet, or page 132 of the packet, page 9 of the remaining changes. And they said, let's just call that decorative ornamental features so that we're not just saying fountains and statues, that if you have a decorative ornamental feature, that can be allowed. Another item that came up for discussion was hot tubs. So what we did was we took Planning Commission's recommendation and City Council's recommendation. We put together these tables. We redlined any changes that we tried to group them into categories of, is it a decorative feature or is it something that is more of a social feature, such as a pizza oven, hot tub, fire pit, those types of things. So we tried to group them, and then we looked at the setbacks and tried to put similar setbacks on those types of uses based on what their possible impact could be to neighboring properties. So the two changes, again, were the landscape feature, we redefined that to decorative ornamental features. And Planning Commission also asked that hot tubs be decreased to 2 feet rather than 5 feet. So that's consistent with the original recommendation of City Council to go down to the 2 feet. Another item that was brought up to me today is that the outdoor kitchen, I incorrectly have a 200 volt listed there, and it should be a 220 volt, so we'll make that edit. But other than that, we're looking for, is there any other modifications you'd like to see to those tables? I have a slide on each group, but I think it's probably more effective to just hear your concerns, and I can go to the slide.
So, in what you have here on page 10, we're at 5 feet. We're recommending to go back to 2 feet for outdoor kitchens, minimum distance from property lines.
So for outdoor kitchens, it would currently have a rear yard minimum of 5 feet, but be allowed right up to the edge on any other. It's not allowed in the front yard, but any of the sides, it's,
Your electrical connection, I have to chime in on it. There are no residences with more than 240 volts.
240.
Therefore, they can have
Or
electric connections.
I think, didn't you just amend it
What
to
would be
220? Didn't you?
220? Should it be
I-
She said it
240?
was 200, she corrected it to 220.
Again, there's no one who has more than that.
Oh, right.
No
but she
one,
just-
no more than that.
She
yeah.
just had the number wrong. I'm sorry,
Right.
she did.
Oh, I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
a superfluous statement since,
Is
Oh, she was trying
That
to
it
be
must be
accurate.
less than 220?
What's that?
Because it says it must be less than 220.
So,
So would the correct fix be
it's
220 or
120 or 220,
240?
isn't that how
what
it
do
works?
what are we trying to do?
No, she was trying to be accurate with the number. She
What
said
I know, what are we trying to prevent?
Nothing, she was just trying to identify what the
I'm
voltage
wondering
is.
whether we even need to put anything in there
I don't know why. it was
with
in
regard to the voltage
Yeah.
that is in your kitchen.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything.
It's a
Oh,
super oven.
A dishwasher, trying to prevent a dishwasher?
At 120 volts?
Can you have a dishwasher at 120?
Yours is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about a full-size refrigerator?
Yours is.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything.
Everything's
Oh.
120? Okay. Yeah.
You can have a hot tub at 120. Anything's 120. I think his point is
I just think it's pointless to
To
put
go
a,
there?
to specify.
yeah, but, you know, if we want to
Well,
confuse the public even more, we could leave it in there, but I'd leave it out.
She was just trying to be accurate with the number of 220 as opposed to 200.
Yeah,
Which
and I appreciated that.
Your point is well made that there's, yeah, nothing there.
Great.
Good, thank you.
Learned something, thank you.
So we still kept our 5 feet on the back fence. We
Well,
didn't,
that-
our recommendations. Is that,
Well, that's why I wanted to discuss, yeah. So,
but you want to get it closer again?
yeah, I do.
The
we already-
outdoor kitchen?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought we,
Maximize the use of the yard, so that's my point for
We're
that.
trying to maximize the protection of the neighbor. Don't you remember that discussion?
yeah.
Well, when my neighbor is doing barbecuing, I know.
So do you really want to have this discussion again?
We're talking about a
Come
fixed,
on.
wait, we're
Okay.
talking about a fixed kitchen here.
Yeah.
We're talking about the outdoor fixed Uber kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't think 5 feet is a big hardship. You know, if you're rolling your barbecue to the back fence,
You can do
that's
that.
just gonna happen.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Okay.
There was some discussion to make it 2, and what I was trying to do was trying to protect just, serving the neighbors over the fence as you're cooking. It was
Yeah.
protection of the neighbors was the intent.
Okay. I like to maximize the use of the yard.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
carry on.
Okay, carry
Well, I
on.
don't think we have any changes.
No changes, although
Great.
I know yards like this.
I do too.
Right up against,
Yeah.
they're very happy.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to item 8. Item 9, village sidewalk signs.
Karen, are you here?
Alright.
Wake up.
We're here. So the ordinance as currently written specifies that a village sidewalk sign must be two-sided. It can be 18 inches wide, 58-inch max height, and that's including the pole. It doesn't say what the maximum height is of the sign. It requires that it is on a pole, and it has 2 allowances. One, the pole can either go in the sidewalk or be in a stand, and you're not allowed to have lighting. The ordinance also specifies a lot of other things regarding where it can be placed, but we're not going to get into that, because really what we need guidance on is the design. So during Planning Commission discussion, within our draft code, we have 2 options.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, there's the BIA design, and it has that curvilinear edge on the top. It's rectangular in form with curvilinear edges on the top and bottom. We also included an oval, thinking it fits the same size, it kind of looks nice. It went through the first round of the draft code without comment, and I apologize, I should have brought that up. But so what the code fails to include, or did fail to include, was the materials. It doesn't talk about what the sign face should be made of. So these are recent questions that have come up with recent applications. So to fix that within the draft, we've specified that quality materials such as wood, metal, or similar durable and weatherproof materials shall be required, that the base and the pole must be cast iron, and that the sign face now has a maximum height limit of 30 inches to reflect the BIA sign that was approved, and that the maximum sign area is 3.75 square feet. And what we're looking for direction on this evening is the shape, whether or not it should be limited to the one BIA shape. There are 3 existing signs in the village right now that have been approved that are the exact BIA shape, or should we open that and allow the oval? This went to Planning Commission, and they discussed it, and there was a bit of hesitation. They really wanted the BIA to weigh in on this, so glad that we have a representative here tonight. And during that meeting, I think it was Commissioner Westman said, I don't think the oval is impactful. She wanted to move forward with a recommendation to include the oval, and I think we'll hear now from the BIA and what they would be open to, and then
Well, let's hear from the BIA before I release the Kraken, AKA Councilmember Bottorff. Why don't you come on up, BIA?
Good evening. Well, I was on the original committee that worked on that design, which was brought to the city council. It was discussed at the city council, and the design was approved by them. So really, part of what I'm here for is to hear why we need a second choice. We did meet again, the BIA, when this came up, we met again so that we could make a recommendation. And the committee still kept with the original recommendation. But, you know, also, we were just never presented with any reason why we needed to have two. And I think one of the things, I'm really glad that the materials are being specified, because one of the signs that was made is kind of made out of a fiberboard sort of thing, and it's not really holding up that well. But I think that the one, besides that, another really good thing that's come out of it is the awareness on the part of staff to tell people who are applying that this sign is going to cost them in the neighborhood of $700, including permits, which is not very expensive, because the rumor was going around that it was, you know, $2,000, including the permits, to have this sign, and that just doesn't seem to be the case. The Paradise Beach Grill, which was the first one to do it, their sign is beautiful, made by Pleasure Point Designs, and the whole thing was in the neighborhood of $700. So the committee hasn't made, recommends still that we go with the BIA approved signs. Personally, I'm interested in why we need two, but really it was discussed by the council, discussed again by the BIA, and their recommendation is to stick with the approved design.
Thank you, Karin. Councilmember Bottorff, did you have anything to say?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that presentation, Karin. I appreciate that. I think everybody knows that I've been on this committee for probably longer than I want to admit, and this came to us as a problem about having our village look like a smorgasbord, and so we didn't want that. And the intent was never to have a cafeteria approach to what kind of sign you want. It was to have one sign that was approved by the BIA, which went through many, many meetings to come up with that. The council came back, they approved it. It was never an item that I don't think the planning commission was asked, or even staff was asked to weigh in on. No one was asked, because the idea was to have the BIA solve their own dilemma and make their recommendation. The city council to embrace that, say, look, if you want to sign, pick one, stick to the criteria, and may the force be with you, okay? So what's happened is somebody says, I like this, and it's like, what this does is it makes it an enforcement problem for me, because what we did enact at the last meeting was to go out and finally start enforcing some of our ordinances. And when we have all these variations, what, you know, if we're gonna end up with A-frames back in the village again is what we're opening the door to. So I am opposed to the design on the left. I want to support what the council originally approved, the sign that's created, the one that's already been done, and the actual amount is, with city permits and sign, $465, not $750. So it's not $2,000, not $750, $465. I encourage all BIA members to go get one, and I would love for this council to finally just approve what we did and stick with it and never discuss it again.
Just as a curiosity, staff, so we can do what we love to do so well, which is affix blame and humiliate a single person. Who came up with the oval? Was the oval something that one of the village merchants decided they might like, or?
No, they didn't. A couple of years ago, we received some calls for people that wanted some variety, and then around that same time, the designer of the original sign asserted that we owed them royalties for that design. Our staff's position was we never had a contract. That was something the BIA did. And so this is one way to say, well, we're not necessarily beholden to this one design. There is some flexibility.
The designer wasn't Councilmember Bottorff, was it?
No.
Okay, just want to establish that.
I'll
I get
neither
it.
confirm or deny that.
All right. No intellectual property? Not interested in that?
No.
Okay.
Just, I never want to discuss this again.
That's because you lived with the mock-up for like 3 years. That's why, in your home. Any council members, anybody have anything to say? Because I'm all in favor of just leaving one sign. It's just fine. We're not going to wind up in court with some sign designer, and we're okay. No ovals.
No, it's perfect. Leave it alone, it's perfect.
What's next?
Okay. Non-conforming structures. So this came to you, it's the table on page 92-6, but it's in this summary. And when we came before city council, I think we all got confused because the table itself was confusing. And you asked us, staff, please, instead of trying to work through every edit at city council, you said, please just clean this up, let's make it user-friendly. So what we did is we tried to clean up the language as well as provide an example, so it was really clear how this is applied. When we took this to Planning Commission, they found one other section, it's the third row down. For exterior, it said repairs, and what they wanted us to clarify that it's exterior reconstruction, including it required to be demolished and then rebuilt, and modifications that alter or affect the non-conforming aspect of the structure. So that's been clarified. And then instead of using the word rebuild, it is very clear that it's demolished and rebuilt of an existing building wall within that area for the example. So we clarified that. We also added a reference. So when there's involuntary damage or destruction, there's another section within, on the next page, that really gives some great examples of when that happens and what is required. So adding that reference to clarify that it's not just within the table, but there's a longer explanation following the table. So with that, we're wondering if you're okay with our edits and if the table seems more clear.
Seems like what we approved and what we agreed on. Anybody have any issue with the edits?
You're
Seeing
just trying,
none?
you're
Oh.
you're just trying to differentiate between actually doing some remodeling as opposed to the demolish word, which is, I think, great clarification, because that wasn't our intent.
Okay. And the whole example column is new to provide those examples. Okay, so with that, we've made it through the 9 of the 10, and now we'll jump into the accessory dwelling units. So that was topic 8.
Drum roll, please.
So accessory dwelling units, there's been major changes at the state level on accessory dwelling units, and I'm just going to jump right into them. There's new terminology. So previous code, or the existing code today, we call these secondary dwelling units. In the state legislation, it's now called accessory dwelling units. There are new categories of ADUs. There's the attached accessory dwelling unit, in which you add on to a home, but the dwelling unit's attached to one wall. There's a detached accessory dwelling unit, which pretty much explains itself. There's the internal ADU, which is inside the existing home. And an internal ADU can also be within an existing accessory structure. And another, this is not required by the state legislation, but junior accessory dwelling units were introduced in a different legislation. And we were asked to take a look at junior ADUs as well. So the junior ADUs, we brought those to Planning Commission, and junior ADU is very similar from an interior ADU, except that it may share a bathroom with the main residence, and it's limited to an efficiency kitchen and not a full kitchen. So there's the sink pipe is limited, as well as the amount of electric, 120 volt. And within the other requirements are true for an internal ADU as well, except that the 500 square foot maximum, it depends on the size of the lot. That can vary within an internal ADU. So we took the idea of a junior ADU to the Planning Commission, and a simple addition to the code was to add under the internal ADU definition that the term, the state definition of a JADU would be included within our internal ADU definition. And the Planning Commission said this is a welcome change. Why not include the junior ADU? It might make more things legal that are out there, and it also just is another opportunity for affordable housing and remove some barriers. So that was their recommendation. Do you want to talk about that at all before I move on?
I know that Councilmember Bertrand would definitely like to speak about this, but to steal one of his ideas, in one of our regular meetings, he discussed having a workshop for residences residents of the community, because there's a lot of misconceptions about ADUs. We'd like to promote them, we'd like to encourage them, and a lot of people fear them because it means walking into the city and speaking to a staff person. So perhaps the planning department could,
Yeah, that'd be great.
generate a little community meeting at Jade Street perhaps, or even the community room here. Get people comfortable with it. And now, to Jacques Bertrand.
I'm not sure what you want me to talk about, but
Well, ADUs, I know, is one of your favorite things, and I know you have, significant and good ideas.
okay, so, but we're going to talk about whether we like the whole concept at this point. I mean,
How do you feel about this, what's just been done? How about the junior ADU?
well, when I was in college and searching for rooms, I saw a lot of things like this, actually, where someone took out a window and that was a door, and then that became a room. And my overall concept about ADUs and JDUs is based on, well, let me back up. When I first came to Capitola and listened to our housing development director, Dave Foster, propose ADUs, I was against it. And so I live out in Cliffwood Heights, if anyone knows. And I said, okay, I moved to this neighborhood to be in a neighborhood that had large lots, relatively large houses. It's not concentrated, a lot of parking and stuff like that. And over the years, I've thought about it a little bit more as I see several things happen in our society. The pressures to basically force cities to supply housing. So as a lot of people know, because of AMBAG, it's not their fault. It's basically the state of California telling us that we have to supply housing for potential residents to relieve the obvious lack of housing and the difficulties in being able to pay rent. So that's a whole big issue. So ADUs, in a way, from my standpoint, is a way to provide that for a certain segment of society. But the reality is, at least in my neighborhood, and what I see when I walk around, and I think a lot of the city council people here see the same thing, is a lot of people are doubling up or tripling up or quadrupling up in homes. And this is a natural thing because of economics, because of the lack of housing, and for a whole variety of reasons. So the reality is that we're in a city that does have a housing shortage, and people are taking other means to solve that. And that's not a bad or a good thing, it's just this is the reality. The other reality in this city is a lot of people do sell their homes, and people that buy the homes are not necessarily residents of the home. One of the issues there is an economic pressure. So a family gets older, the kids leave, or maybe they lose their job or something like that, and you're forced to sell. An ADU is an option that can make someone who's in a position where economics is a problem to actually stay in that house. Maybe they could retire and be in that smaller unit, and their kids could take over the front or something like that. So this is an option that I think, and I believe, will make it easier for the residents that currently live in Capitola to actually stay here. And it's an organic thing. Not everyone would find this as something they would like. Not everyone could probably afford it right off. And so that's a different subject. But the reality is that I like things to change organically. When I first moved to Cliffwood Heights, there was a lot of families, there was a lot of retired people. Most homes were actually owned by people, and they lived there. Now, I just walk down the street and people said, I'm campaigning, people just tell me, don't even bother knocking on that door. It's a dead house. There's no one there. And I rarely see the owner, period. And I've heard a lot of people talk about Capitola changing, and this is a direction I don't want to see Capitola change to. I want to have neighbors. I want to see people on the street with kids and stuff like that. And I want to have this ADU as a way to help make this something that will provide housing for people. So that's my basic view about ADUs. I am later, hopefully, working with city staff and with the direction of city council, trying to push an idea so that we could help support this for some people. So some people cannot afford it. Maybe I can, maybe someone else can't. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But have this as a way so that there could be entry into the market. There's a lot of people out there that are actually making this as their profession. I know developers that actually specialize in ADUs because they're seeing this as an added market. San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland as examples. The developers I know are actually working in those areas. So I think those are some of my comments.
Thank you, Jacques. Are we all good with the ADU discussion?
Is
Kristen?
there any regulation about the ADUs being vacation rentals?
If it's in the vacation rental zone,
Yeah,
it
is
could be.
it, there's no problem with that if it's in that zone?
If it's in the
There's
overlay.
no problem with that. You could always add you could add something that states that it cannot be a vacation rental, but that hasn't been discussed.
Is there any willingness to discuss that?
I think if you're in the transient occupancy zone, any habitable space you have is fair game.
Yeah, I don't think,
That's a good point.
I don't think we
If
have,
you're in the
We're pretty
zone.
restrictive with it, so we
True.
contain it.
that's consistent, yeah.
And I'll tell you, knowing the transient zone well, I don't know where there's a square foot to put an ADU anywhere
Right,
in
I
there,
don't-
Right.
so.
I would wonder if there was even a possible place to build one.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about, so.
But I think that's a good comment. And another thing that.
Something to watch, for sure,
Yeah.
and be
Right.
aware of.
Right, and I think there are going to be regulations that are going to be staff have to deal with this, I have to admit. And one that concerns me actually is if we get in the business of supporting people who are of low income and we want to provide ADUs for people of low income. I'm not for public money spent on improving the property for someone.
Great.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes,
I
Katie,
mean,
Okay.
what's next?
So carrying on, so there is support for JADUs.
Yes.
So parking requirements, another change from the state is that for an internal ADU, we are not allowed to require parking,
Mhm.
okay? And it, beyond what is required for the primary residence. So when we do the calculation, we would actually subtract the internal ADU amount of space and come up with the parking calculation for the single-family home. So as a,
Surprisingly
again,
rational.
removing a barrier,
Yeah.
which previously, actually, there was no parking requirement for ADUs
Great, thank you.
within Capitola. Within the code revisions, there was one added, so for attached ADUs or detached ADUs, there is now a requirement of one parking space that was added during the revisions to the code. So those will require parking. And that's
this is
an
an
addition
external-
to the
external
home
ADU.
or an external ADU,
Correct,
correct?
okay.
Okay.
The state only weighed in on the internal. That was
Only
their-
on the internal,
Okay.
yes.
Fine.
Next, for the attached and detached ADU, it can be waived under certain circumstances. So the only one that really applies to Capitola is if it's located in a historic district. We don't have any bus services that run as frequently as required by this allowance. And then permits, when permits are required but not offered in Capitola, they're always offered.
Mhm.
And we don't have, at this time, a car share drop-off location, but that's something we probably will see in the future.
Great, thank you.
Utility connections, that was another change. So internal ADUs, it now prohibits a local agency, being a city or a county.
Or a local water district?
Or local.
Not the local water district. So, and I think there's probably gonna be some more interpretation on that in the future because the question's been raised and, but it prohibits the local agencies. So the area of Capitola that's within the Santa Cruz Water District could not, for an internal ADU, require a utility connection. And just to clarify, that right now is not applicable to the Soquel Creek Water District. Utility connections for attached, so the add-on to a single-family home or a detached ADU, the local agency may require a new separate utility, and that connection fee has to be proportionate to the burden of the ADU. So they have calculations of what is that proportionate fee for the impact fees. So.
There is no instance where this does not refer to water. Because our local utility, PG&E,
Mhm.
will not allow you to have two services serving a single parcel. It's against their Rule 32, and it just doesn't happen. Therefore, the word may is taken with great strength, because we can't. because the only other utility I can think of besides water is electricity and gas. And if the utility will not do it, we cannot require it. So that said, I think water is the thing we need to focus on. And I don't know that we can put anything in our code that flies in the face of or preempts Soquel Creek Water District, correct?
Correct.
We'll let them fight it out with the state and the county?
Exactly.
Good, I like that.
We don't have to pay.
I just have a question, because I'm trying to think how this is gonna play out. Because it's very confusing between an internal ADU and an attached ADU, because in my mind, I'm thinking if somebody comes to us and applies for an addition to add onto their house, make it a 4-bedroom, and then a year later, they come back and want to convert that to an internal ADU, how do we
The
monitor?
perfect loophole, you've just identified it. We wouldn't, at that point, they'd say, I have a larger home, and if they were gonna convert it to an ADU at that point, it's an internal ADU, it's not considered an attached ADU.
Right, so the loss of revenue for the entire year would be offset by the money you didn't have to pay for the meter, so it would be the great loophole.
That's the loophole.
And this is no way telling anyone they can convert their garage into a living space, correct?
We can do that now.
That's coming
they-
up on a different slide.
Oh, really? Thank you. Staying tuned.
Okay, so ADUs are allowed with one single-family home on a lot. So if there's a single-family home, you can have an ADU. If in the multifamily zone, if there's a single-family home on a multifamily lot, you're allowed to have an ADU. If there are 3 units on the multifamily lot, you cannot have an ADU. If you have the density to add another unit, you're welcome to add another unit, but you can't intensify that. And you run into issues of, well, which unit gets the ADU? Do they all get ADUs? And the concern there within the multifamily zone is really that parking has to be, just how many can you actually fit onto a lot? So it's,
Great,
that's the regulation in the code, and that's what's required to be in there by the state, so,
thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Karen.
yeah. My monopoly houses, you like that. So increased size standards. This was discussed at 2 of the planning commission meetings, and I provided you with a map this evening, and added that to the record, and I've got a slide with that map. But the planning commission, as we got into this discussion, asked the question of why do we limit ADUs to lot sizes of 5,000 square feet? Why not allow them in areas like the Jewel Box, that if we decrease that number, we could probably get more ADUs in that area? So we went away from that discussion and said, we're going to bring you a map. We're going to break it up into different categories of lot sizes. And as you can see in the map that you have, as you go lower than the 5,000, I think it's, as you go lower, you'll start seeing the yellow lots, or it's almost like a lime green the way it printed out, are the lots that are between 4 and 5,000. And the Planning Commission wanted to allow those lots between 4 and 5,000 to have a maximum size of 500 square feet and be limited to internal ADUs only, so only within the existing footprint, and that would be an internal ADU or a JADU at that point. So, and the loophole ADU, as mentioned. But, so here's the map. As we look at that, if going down to 4,000 square feet, that introduces 272 new properties that could have an internal ADU on their site.
Can you go back to the other slide? Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where is something that's 4,600 square feet? Where does that fit?
5 to 7,500, or 4,600? Under
640?
Oh, no, it says under 4,000. Would that be under 5,000, or do you?
Oh, I'm sorry. This should be, sorry, that's an error on my part. Let me go back. That should be, under 4,000 should be prohibited.
Okay.
And then good catch. And then from 4,000 to 4,999
Okay, so
would be a
my-
500 square foot
Okay.
internal
That just
ADU
needs to
only.
be under 5,000.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
It's in there.
Not just under 5,000, between 4 and 5,000.
4 and 5,000.
Okay, right, well, she
Yeah.
was gonna include that under 4,000 is prohibited.
Prohibited,
Okay,
yes.
so just one more section that just needs to be added.
But it can be
Yes.
internal.
It's actually here.
And in the draft code, I believe it's correct. So,
Right.
so
It is.
sorry about that on the slide. And then the other thing the planning commission added is in the very bottom. So the state suggestion is 50% to allow units to be 50% of the existing living area and up to 1,200 square feet. The planning commission said 1,200 sounds like a really, like the size of a normal Capitola home. So probably not appropriate for our lot sizes, but let's add for lots that are over, and I apologize again, geez, this table, that should say 12,000 or more.
12,000 plus.
Yep, 12,000 plus for up to a maximum ADU size of 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Any concerns? Doesn't
Rolling.
sound like it. We'll keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
Build them.
Okay.
Build them.
Next, garage conversion. So you cannot convert a garage if it's required for parking.
Right.
If you have a home that doesn't require covered parking because it's smaller, you could convert your garage into a accessory dwelling unit, and we do not have the authority to require it to comply with setbacks. That's been clarified at the state level, that setbacks cannot be required for an existing garage that is converted to an ADU. So that is now in the code. The other direction we got from the Planning Commission is to add a requirement that removal of an ADU cannot create a nonconformity. So we looked at this, and there's some unpractical implications to this. So within an ADU, there are certain allowances you get. For instance, the floor area ratio can go up to, from the typical floor area for the lot size, it gets increased to 0.60. So there's a bonus for having an ADU, an incentive for a bigger home. We could not say that if you were to remove your ADU, that you have to remove that floor area, because somebody would have to take out a chunk of their home. What we did do, because in this conversation with the Planning Commission, there was some concern of if you have a detached accessory dwelling unit and you want to attach it to the home, it should really comply with the code. So we added a provision that incorporation into the primary residence. So a detached accessory dwelling unit may not be incorporated into the primary residence unless parking and setback standards are met. So it's the couple things that we can control and make sure that they're included. If they're going to attach a detached unit onto the home, it has to comply with the setbacks, and there also has to be adequate parking, Okay.
The house would normally require.
as a home would normally require. There was concern that people would create a detached and then try to connect the two and have something that the typical single-family home could not have. So additional standards in the draft, and these were brought forth by Capitola, not the state, is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's now one parking space required for attached and detached ADUs, and that we now allow two-story ADUs. That's been added. It requires a design permit and a conditional use permit, and there's also increased setbacks for those, so they're further away from neighbors. And with that, that concludes my presentation on ADUs. There is one more item that I should have had a slide on. During the last revision by Planning Commission, we previously had an incentive that if you deed restrict your ADU, that you don't have to pay fees associated with ADUs, and then and this is from the existing code, so you would deed restrict it for affordable rents, so at 80% of the AMI, area median income. The Planning Commission there, and within that there was also an allowance that at any time in the future, if say the home was sold or you decided you no longer wanted to have a deed restriction, you could pay the fees at the current level or the adjusted level looking back, and that deed restriction could be taken away. The Planning Commission just thought that would be a kind of a nightmare to track
Yes.
and
How do we monitor that?
enforce. Correct. And so and it's actually a standard. They asked us to look back and see where did this come from. It is something that is within the Santa Cruz ordinance, and they have it really clearly outlined what their fees are and how these are waived, but they also, I'm guessing, have more staff for housing and tracking these ADUs on a, but anyway, we don't have any currently that are deed restricted, and they requested that we remove that incentive.
I think it's become apparent that Santa Cruz can't monitor their ADUs. I won't go any further. So maybe we need to take that out and just not even think about it.
I concur.
Sound right?
I concur.
Okay, good.
So with that, any changes to the ADU?
See that?
Fantastic. Well, that concludes my presentation this evening, and we'll go into next steps. The two items I will be bringing back to you, one is a discussion on the highest story within the village and what the use can be. So.
Good.
And then there was discussion on possibly bringing back more information about the environmentally sensitive habitat.
Right.
Well, just
But we
the
don't have a study on that, but we'll.
Just if there was any problems with the planning
Just-
commission.
we'll let-
tell
yeah,
us what the planning commission said, but also
Sure.
give us the basis for your adjustment of the line, just
Mhm.
so we know we're on solid ground.
Very good.
Thank you.
So am I missing the thing about auxiliary units, sheds?
No, I didn't have enough time to create
Okay,
additional
so
slides.
that'll
we
come back
can,
later.
Yeah.
You know, we could talk about that really quick. There was a request to increase the size of the accessory sheds from 80 square feet to 100 square feet.
You know, there's a rationale to that, and that is, number one, most or the rest of our state has 100 square feet. Secondly, the prefabricated sheds that you purchase, the majority of them are 100 square feet. So there's a rationale for that.
I don't have a problem.
I checked the California State Code on building, and Mike's absolutely correct, it's detailed there. And it's also stated that if it's stated in that code, you basically have to make a prohibition against it. And then all our local vicinity, like Santa Cruz City and Santa Cruz County, it's 100 square feet.
Right.
And most of the cities in the San Francisco Bay Area are 100 square feet, and,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a
it's-
good basis.
And a 10-foot height limit was the other request on that.
That's
So
correct.
Yeah.
100
So-
square feet and 10-foot height
Right.
limit to reflect the state.
And then
I think there's
120 for the
120
eave.
Right, 120 feet, because there's
eave.
20 feet for the eaves.
Yeah.
That's part of the California code. So
Yeah.
the footprint is 100 square feet.
Right.
But the eave can extend out so that the overall drip line, for lack of a better word, is 120.
Yeah, it's basically those three things. Yeah, 100, 120, and 10 feet height at the most.
Good, thank
Okay,
you.
we'll incorporate that into red lines. And
Thanks.
just to go over the next steps, so Planning Commission, they completed their review. They recommended that the changes be brought to City Council and initiate public review. City Council, this evening, we reviewed the pending discussion topics. If you'd like, we can initiate the public review. There's a request to talk about the upper stories within the central village.
Right,
But we
it
could
should
get
happen.
that started, and also that's when we initiate that, we'll be publishing that. Originally, it was requested a 60-day public review. And that was back prior to the new year, was the discussion on the 60-day public review. And from there, once it's gone out to public review, we'll go back to Planning Commission with any comments that came in during the public review period. And we'll bring any suggested revisions, and then they'll make a recommendation to the City Council. And at that point, the City Council will hear public comments, suggest any revisions, and hopefully move forward with adoption.
Then we'll be
And then it
done.
goes off to
just like that.
postal, be done.
If you remember, what was the public review period for the general plan? Was it
It was 90, wasn't it?
90?
I thought it was 90.
No, I want to say it was 45 days.
Really?
I mean, that was the
Okay.
public review period for the EIR for it, so I think we might have ran it concurrently. But we may have extended it a week.
So 60 is more than generous then? I'm just wondering if
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
typically, I think the standard is 30 to 45.
If you would have told me it was 90 for the general plan, I might have said something, but if it was 45 or 60 at the most, then that's fine.
Anything else?
That's it. We'll come back at the next hearing.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our meeting.
May I have a motion to continue?
To,
May I have a motion to continue this, so that we don't have to?
yes. We need a motion to continue this item.
Motion, the items that you're going to bring back?
Yes.
Yeah, motion to continue the item to the,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? And that brings us to the end of the meeting.
I want to make one more comment.
Please do.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm really impressed with staff, Rich, Katie, and Jamie on the work done here and with the help of Mr. Noble. So this is a tedious process,
Tell us about it.
really. I don't know how you guys do it, but, and I hope the public appreciates it because one of the aims is to make building permits easier, faster, and we've looked at fee structure. A lot of things are going to come out beneficial.
Yeah. And to the students who are with us tonight, you made it to the end of the meeting. Well done.
Yes.
Stay engaged. and I'll tell you a little secret. This job up here is a learn as you go thing.
Oh, good.
We do not walk up here knowing everything, and we still don't know everything, and we don't even know close to everything.
Certainly about planning.
So stay engaged, have fun. I hope you all had fun governing tonight.
Yep.
And I'm on my way on vacation
Oh, really?
on my bike to Death Valley, which is the exact opposite of Capitola. I want to let you know. And I'm doing it just so I can come back here and appreciate it.
Enjoy the flowers.
Yes,
I will enjoy the flowers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really.
Meeting's adjourned.
Wow, fun. Really, that's good. Are the flowers there?
Yes, I'm leaving tomorrow morning.